Thank you. Okay, great. Great. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited to be here because I think it will be fun to talk about maybe a topic that you haven't heard as much from Facebook, and that's kind of how we ourselves are using Facebook primarily, but also other social media channels, and how we try to communicate and talk about what we think Facebook means in the world. And I think a really good place for us to start is to remember that at the end of the day, what social media is about is people. And in everything we do, we really have to think about speaking as much as a person as we do as a company. And that's really the number one premise of where we start, is thinking through what we want to communicate and then thinking about how we can communicate about that as a person. I mean, the big change that really has been happening thanks to things like Facebook is that people are communicating with companies and brands in the same way they're communicating with their friends. When they log on to Facebook in the morning, they're actually seeing a news feed that includes all of their favorite friends, their mothers, their grandmothers, people from their childhood, people that they just met last night. And it then also includes Facebook, and it also includes other great brands that are here today. So how do you actually make that content and that information interesting to them? How do you make it engaging? And how do you make sure you're coming across as like a genuine, real person and not like a corporation? So I thought I would just start with a quick overview of some of the main channels we're using at Facebook in our communications through social media. I'm going to go through these channels, but I want to just throw out there that what I think matters isn't the channels themselves. It's at the end of the day the content you're creating and how you're creating it and how you're engaging through these channels. But I thought it would be helpful for all of you to get a picture of what we're using. I think it's no surprise that kind of the centerpiece of what we're using is Facebook. And we have many, many Facebook pages, but our primary one is the Facebook on Facebook page. It's always a mouthful to say, and it's always kind of, we even have trouble with what to call it internally. But I think for users, it's pretty clear. It's us. So a quick overview of kind of some stats about that page. We now have more than 33 million people who have liked it, which has really been amazing to watch. When I started managing this, I think we had maybe 5 to 10. We have 18 million plus monthly actives, people that are actually engaging with the content in some way and seeing it in their news feed. And we have 2.223 million people who are active every day. So it's a really big audience, a lot of responsibility for figuring out how to keep them engaged in things that matter to them. Well, it's not just Facebook. And I put up this slide because this is a common question we get, which is, what the hell is Facebook doing on Twitter? Well, we made a decision a while ago. I mean, we've been on there probably for more than 2 years. We're agnostic. We want to communicate with people that are talking about us anywhere that they are, and that includes on Twitter. And we don't really reply anymore to these questions about what we're doing on there, but we still get them pretty much every single day. And we also, of course, YouTube. We have invested a lot more time and energy in video as a company, which has been really exciting to see in the past 6 months. And so we're really trying to build out a much more robust YouTube channel. We do have a lot of video up there already, and recently crossed about 1 million video views for the channel. Still relatively small compared to other companies, but for us, it's a channel that's going to become increasingly important. So I wanted to talk about the fact that it's not just our namesake properties that we use. It's on Facebook specifically. We have tons and tons of other pages. In fact, we have 10 pages representing other parts of Facebook or topics about Facebook run by the company that each have over 1 million people liking it. They include things like the Facebook engineering page. This is really used, this is very much a niche page that's used for recruiting efforts and to really have a close connection to the engineering and technical community. These are places where there's blog posts about topics that I sometimes have no idea what's going on in them. Things like, down and deep into the coding that we did around a product. Facebook platform page, this is for our massive developer community with millions and millions of developers around the world to keep them updated on changes and ways they can be building new applications. And it also includes topical pages. We have dozens of these. Some of the most popular include things like sports on Facebook, celebrities on Facebook. And these are really, really oriented toward consumers and everyday people who are interested in those topics to kind of give them, to build a bigger community around learning where they can go on Facebook to really be engaged in sports and other topics. So what's really important with all these channels, whether it be on Twitter, whether it be on Facebook, is having a really consistent and really human voice to what we're doing. I just put up here kind of 5 basic principles we live by in thinking about how we write and produce content for all of these channels. I'll go through them really quickly. Brevity is important. I can't tell you how many times I've had even people within Facebook send me a status update that goes on forever. That's just not going to work. People aren't going to read it. You need to get to the point and make it really clear. It needs to be direct and authentic. It can't have a bunch of adjectives. It can't use the jargon that many of us get used to using inside of our jobs. It needs to be casual. It's fine to use more colloquial terms, and it's fine to have a more fun tone in what you're doing. And I think fourth here, and probably the most important, is that it's personal. That it feels like you're actually talking to like a real human being. That it feels like you're having a conversation, and it doesn't feel like you're talking down to someone. And then finally, and this is something Victoria mentioned a lot of, having some kind of call to action, like giving people some idea of what you'd like them to do. Do you want them to watch something? Do you want them to learn more about something? Do you have a question that you'd like them to engage in with you? So I thought I'd go through a few samples of how we do this, specifically on the Facebook page. Again, we have all those other channels, but this page is really the centerpiece for us. And across the dozens and dozens of other pages that we run on Facebook, we also tend to syndicate some of that best content onto the Facebook page when we think it really reaches this mass mainstream audience. With 33 million people liking it, I think of it as kind of like, our mass page. We want to make sure that whatever we put on there appeals to the most people possible. So here's an example of how we try to do a lot of posts that are oriented around what's really happening in the world. What are the current events? What are the holidays? What are people talking about in the world right now? And of course, Christmas and the holidays are a big time for that. With this specific example, what we did is we didn't just, we have actually found that simply even just saying like, Happy New Year has a huge payoff, something I never imagined. But if I do a Happy New Year post on the Facebook page, I probably get 4x the number of likes and comments than anything else that we do in the past. And I think that just speaks to the fact that people want to have a real conversation with you. They don't want to be marketed to. They want to feel this kind of common bond. So what we did this year for Christmas and the holidays is we did a whole series of posts leading up to Christmas Eve. And then on Christmas Eve, we tried to make it really, really personal by including a photo album of pictures of our employees across the world in all our various offices doing something fun. In Palo Alto, they were having their ugly sweater day. In Japan, I forget what they were doing. I think they were just like jumping around. In Austin, they were having their holiday party. And we posted that along with a greeting about Christmas, and we just saw a huge return in the number of people engaged with that. Another common type of post we'll do is something that's we really want to highlight everyday stories, like what's happening in people's real lives and how Facebook's a part of that. We do a series called Story of the Week where we try to highlight something that's being written about us that is really about individuals or groups of people that are doing something amazing, or in this case, just really something that's just part of the zeitgeist. People talking about, will you friend your mom on Facebook, and like acknowledging that that's a real thing that people talk about in the world, and we're going to engage in that conversation with you too. Marking our own milestones. We try not to do too much of this because we want this page to be about the people that are using Facebook and not about us. But we do think we do find that people are interested in knowing when we reach an important milestone. So we try to create a really personal tone to those. Last week we reached our 7-year birthday, and so what we did for that is we actually figured out how many other people share this birthday with us and tried to make it about them as much as it was about us. Of course, news about new products and things that we're launching are core to this, and we do that usually through our blog. The way we have our system set up is every time we post a blog post on blog.facebook.com, it also generates this feed story on our wall of our page and then into everyone's news feed that has liked the page. And here's an example of a new mobile feature we launched a couple weeks ago. And then we also use our page and Twitter as a way to respond when some crazy rumors flying around, crisis communications, as we like to call it in the industry. A few weeks ago, I was flying home from a personal trip and noticed that everyone on Twitter thinks we're closing down. Don't know why people would believe it, but enough people were believing it that we thought we had to respond and make really clear that no, Facebook has no intention of closing down at this stage. I think things are going really well. So we had to quickly respond. Within a couple hours, we got a tweet and a Facebook page update out. Here's the one we posted. We tried to keep it casual and a little bit of fun while also trying to make it really clear that we're staying around for as long as possible. And what was great about this approach, and I think something that everyone who's in more of a communications role could apply, is that we found that this simple status update became the statement that all the media began using. And it was really a great thing to happen on a Sunday so that our press people didn't have to be on the phone all day trying to defend the fact that we're not going to shut down. So that's just a quick overview of kind of how we're using social media at a really high level and how we're using our Facebook page specifically. But what I really want to talk about today is how we're constantly looking for ways to take that to the next level. And we really want to take that to the next level by telling the real stories of the real people on Facebook. And how do we really spotlight those and highlight those and make them really meaningful? Our overall goal with how we're communicating with all these channels is to really help convey in a personal way how Facebook is meaningful and important in people's lives and make it about what those stories are. So we embarked on a campaign that we called Facebook Stories, which started about in the spring time frame as we were nearing reaching 500 million people on Facebook. And let me go back. Well, actually, before I really get into that story, I wanted to just throw out a couple stories and compare and contrast a couple stories. And the first story is one that I think many of you probably have heard. And this is a story that starts at Harvard. It starts in a dorm room called Kirkland House. And it starts with Mark Zuckerberg and his roommates deciding that, why isn't there a digital version of the Facebook that exists on campus? And they went ahead and right away built a digital version, and they called it the Facebook. And this quickly spread through Harvard within weeks, if not days. And then from there, spread to universities across the country, across the world, and then it was opened up to everyone in the world. And then we got to where we are today, which is this is a look at all the connections on Facebook if you were to put them on a map. And you'll see that it pretty much creates a map of the world with a few exceptions. It was a really cool project that one of our data interns did and kind of spread virally online, which we also helped by posting it on our Facebook page. But people really loved this because I think it shows the meaning behind these connections. It's actually helping the world become much more closer. So that's a story. Well, raise your hand if you've actually heard that story. Pretty much everyone, I'm assuming, if not 3/4. Let's look at some other stories that we've heard at Facebook. And there's the story of Holly Rose. She's a mother. She lives in Phoenix. And one day she was on Facebook and got a status update from a high school friend that was telling her friends to do a self-breast exam, make sure everything's okay. And she made her think, okay, I'm going to do it. She did an exam, discovered a lump, and within 1 week discovered that she had cancer. She credits that status message was really safe. So essentially, discovered she had cancer, and then had a really big dilemma that she faced, which was how public do I want to be about this struggle? And she posted some kind of subtle status messages herself. And then she found that people started responding, trying to find out what was going on. And she made kind of the fateful decision that I'm going to go ahead and kind of chronicle my journey on Facebook. And I think for her, might not be true for everyone, but definitely for her, she found that experience of letting people in to know what was going on was an immense amount, provided an immense amount of support and really helped her get through it. And the good news at the end of the day is that she went through all the treatment, is now cancer-free, and has actually become an advocate herself for women to do self-breast exams by creating her own kind of campaign on Facebook, which she is really active in. Another story is one from Molly, John, and Theo. They're a family in Chicago. Molly and John struggled for years to have a child, and then finally decided to go with the domestic adoption route, and then soon found that that's just as challenging as anything they had faced before. So one day John decided, why don't I try, again, he struggled with this question, like, how much do I want to let people know about what we're going through? And he made the decision, well, I'm going to post a Facebook group and let people know, like, who we are and the fact that we're really looking to adopt our first baby. He did that, and a woman in Florida saw the group after searching on Facebook for families that were looking to adopt. And basically on December 31st, 2009, baby Theo was born, and they now have a happy family, which was really great news for them. And then a third story are Michelle and Thomas. They've been married for a long time, but the core of the story is that Thomas has a debilitating nervous system disease called ALS. This is a disease which I hadn't even heard of much, except for a few weeks ago, but it really leaves someone almost completely paralyzed, unable to move, and pretty much isolated because you don't have a means to communicate. You can't speak. Well, he and a huge community of people with ALS have found that through many of the devices that have been created with people for these kind of disabilities to actually interact with the computer and mobile devices, they're able to use Facebook as a way to communicate with one another and have a way to not be isolated and to actually continue to have a really meaningful life and communicate with people. How many of you have heard of any of these three stories or anything like it? A few people, which makes me happy, but nowhere near as many people that know the story of the founding of Facebook. But I would actually argue that these are the most powerful stories that have happened as a result of people making connections and communicating. So this is the core of what we were trying to do with Facebook Stories. We were trying to make these stories, not each individual one, but the collection of them, as powerful and as meaningful to people as the stories that they already knew about us as a company. And so when we were about to reach 500 million people on Facebook, it raised the important question of, like, what does that really mean? And we really thought about our own lives. This is a picture of some of my friends on Facebook. And just in the past 6 months, I've received status messages from my friend and colleague Randy about the fact that she's engaged to get married. I've gotten a story about the fact that my friend Erin is, oh, I'm sorry, I screwed this up. Randy is actually having her first child, which is even more exciting. Erin is engaged to be married. And then my friend Charles was celebrating the fact that he's now in San Francisco and starting with us at Facebook. These are just little tidbits. I mean, these are things all of you have probably had happen on Facebook at some point in time. But behind those are a lot of bigger stories. And so when we really thought about it, we were like, what do you see in your own news feed? How can we take that to the next level? And our goal was to tell people's stories at scale and to tell them in a real, authentic way. We were already hearing these stories through a few channels that were really disparate and really messy. Random emails, like the one in the upper left there, from colleagues who were like, hey, did you hear about this person who heard about this person who got married after they met on Facebook? And then we'd have to kind of hunt around and try to pull the pieces together of that story. We had our own submission form kind of 10 layers down on the site where if people knew where to find it, they could actually let us know what their story was. But it was really clunky and really hard to manage. And then occasionally, we got to the heart of these stories before and did one-off blog posts here and there to share it with people. But this didn't scale. This was, it wasn't as core to what we were doing with a lot of our social media properties. So we were looking at how we could change that. And 500 million was the perfect opportunity. So the challenges we faced were, one was that we had a moving target. Reaching 500 million, while we knew it was likely to happen in the summer, no one can ever tell us exactly when that's going to be, only until about a day or two before. So we had to work under this ambiguity of how long do we really have to produce something big. And we knew we had maybe 6 weeks. We had thousands, in the neighborhood of 4,000 to 5,000 old submissions that had come from all those means that I mentioned before. They were scattered all over the place, and no one had actually, few people had spent much time going through them in any depth, and we really wanted to go through them, so we had something to start with. And then we made the decision that we wanted to build something, of course, on Facebook, but we were going to do it as an app, something that was built using the tools that Facebook platform allows, that we wanted to also be a demonstration so people could see that this is something they could also do for their companies and brands. So we faced the challenge of coding and building an app when this project was being run by communications and marketing. So that was a little bit scary. We don't know how to code. But we had a secret weapon in all this, and thankfully that secret weapon was the summer interns. And we had, basically, we had other people on the communications and marketing teams volunteer their interns to take part, which was a huge help. These were the people that actually went through 4,000 to 5,000 of our past submissions, threw out the spam, focused on the ones that had something meaningful to say. Out of that, about 400 were ones we decided we'd want to use in this project when we launched it. And they actually had to email all 400 people to get their legal permission to use them. And then they also had to take those 400 and summarize them into a one-paragraph summary. That was a lot of manual work and something that we didn't want to have to do again. But they were really critical to it. The other thing we did is we worked with outside developers. Involver was the developer, and then also Just3, who works on the design side, as kind of partners in this, so we could kind of have additional resources. And they were really crucial in getting the application built. So here is the application we were ready to launch in July. This lives at stories.facebook.com as its own website. And then there's also a version that lives as an application that can be placed onto Facebook pages. You'll notice that the first decision we made when you look at this is to focus on a map view so people could see the breadth of stories that existed around the world. We thought it would really help people see that, like, these really exist, tell your own. Looking below here, these are just, right below the map, you will see the most recent stories that have been submitted. And I pulled this screenshot recently, so these are really recent stories. They include one in the upper right corner of a 24-year-old who literally, came out of the closet using Facebook and tells the story of what that meant to him. And then the two below him are actually both stories about people that were reunited with a estranged family that they, slowly rebuilt connections with over time on Facebook. The other way we organized the stories that we wanted to spotlight through this were by themes. We had about 36 themes. These were themes from family and reunions, which you probably would expect, to things like pets, because we had noticed early on that lots of people talked about, a lost dog that was actually found because of people that they connected with on Facebook, to even, more fun topics, including celebrities and then nonprofits and causes and community activities. And when you select, I selected for this presentation, I selected love as a category since we're in February and it's Valentine's Day. And don't forget if you have forgotten, because it's Monday. And you'll see here there are stories right below here that include things like a man in Arizona who reconnected with a high school sweetheart after 20 years, rebuilt a relationship, and are now getting married. And they, in fact, invited us to their wedding, which, believe it or not, was not the first time that happened, and I think someday we really should take people up on that offer. It could be a really fun experience. This is the submission box that goes along with it. It's at the bottom of every version of Facebook Stories, and I call it the magic of 420 characters to be specific. And the magic is that we limited how much people could actually write in the box. And to be completely honest, it was like a split-second decision we made. We were kind of forced to decide how we're going to do the submission box. We're in a rush. And I said, let's do 420 characters. It's the same number of characters as the status update on Facebook. And it was actually, I think, in hindsight, a really good thing, because it means that what we had found in our old submissions is people would just ramble, or they wouldn't get to the point, or they'd tell us all kinds of things that they liked about Facebook, but what we cared about is, well, what did it do for you? And they might eventually get to it, but it might be 4 paragraphs down. This way, it really orients people to get to the heart of their story, which is really powerful when you're going to display it with so many other stories in that kind of view that I showed you. And so from this submission box, they can select the theme that it fits with. And they instantly can share it with us. This is integrated with all of our tools on Facebook platform, so it asks people to log into Facebook if they aren't already logged in, and that way their real name and the public version of their profile, whatever they've chosen for that to be, is associated with their story, something that is really clear to them as they look through the application and how it works. But it gives a really great authenticity to these stories. We also worked with working with our consumer marketing team. They were able to sign up a large number of partners to work with us for the launch. They integrated the tab version of our Facebook Stories application into their pages. When you do a tab version, you actually have the option to only focus on one of the themes. So that was great for partners like Project Red. They could just focus on the movements theme. They wanted to talk about big global movements that people had started using Facebook. Or the National PTA could only focus on education, and the Coast Guard, which focused on military. Well, we were getting ready to launch, and I come from the communications side, and so this is something that always happens at Facebook. 3 days out from our launch, we finally knew when we were going to reach 500 million. We were all getting ready, but of course the app wasn't yet done. And we get a call from Kara Swisher. Many of you may know her. She's a blogger here and a very well-known former Wall Street Journal columnist. She calls us saying, I have the scoop. I know you're doing this project. I know you're going to reach 500 million, and I'm going to write about it. So we made the decision to go ahead and cooperate with her. And that actually paid off for us because it created a lot of excitement about this before the launch. And it also led to some last-minute submissions that we could add into the application. For the real launch, we had been working really closely in the communications team on an interview that Mark Zuckerberg himself was going to be doing with ABC World News with Diane Sawyer. And so the decision was made to tie in that interview, which was kind of originally happening independently, with this project and with this milestone, so that Mark himself could kind of tee off the fact that what this means, what 500 million means, is really about people and what they're doing on Facebook. And this is just one quote from that interview that appeared on TV that I think was a good way to kind of start things off for us. It shows, too, that as much as we're talking about social media here, there is a role for traditional media when you have the opportunity to use it to kind of create the entire loop of excitement around what you're doing. But on the social media front, the way we launched this was we, of course, had a blog post from Mark himself. It really highlighted in the blog some of the stories I mentioned, including the Holly Rose one. He did a video himself where he spoke to people on Facebook, thanking them for being part of it and explaining that these stories are something that really matter to us. And then we did a whole series of country-targeted posts from the Facebook page. If you've never used the targeting feature on your Facebook page, look into it. You can target by country, you can target by city, you can target by state, you can target by language. It's really helpful to us. For this specific project, what it enabled us to do was to look at some of our countries where we were still kind of emerging, countries like India, like I have up here, and say, okay, what can we do there where, we already knew we didn't have as many Indian stories as we had from the US, North America, and Europe. But what we did do is we worked with some of our in-market marketing people to get a few Indian celebrities to participate and tell their stories about Facebook. And then we were able to do a very targeted post to those people highlighting those stories to kind of jumpstart them getting excited about the project. And then we got all of our employees involved. As Aaron at Zappos talked about, your employees and the people at the company can be just as important as anyone else in these campaigns. And so the way we did this is all of our employees that wanted to participate actually created gestures of thanks in photos that they did, usually holding a sign, but many of them got even much more creative than that. Some of them did the shapes of thanks as a group. And we took that and posted it as a special tab as well on the Facebook page and published that photo album and included links to that photo album in all of our efforts so that there was this real sense of involvement from all of us at Facebook in being part of this project. So here are the results so far of what we did with Facebook Stories. I mentioned real quick, from a pure attention perspective, it was great. And in all frankness, of course, having Mark participate had as much to do with the press attention as the stories themselves. But being able to leverage the attention he always gets to get that message out was really powerful. And we got just, hundreds and hundreds of stories and blog posts around the world. And if you're someone who watches Tech Meme, we led that pretty much for a day and a half, thanks to the project. We've had 5,000 real stories shared so far, and those are all live on the Facebook Stories app. And we continue to get them in, even on weeks when we don't really promote it or ask for them. We get dozens every week. One important thing to note, which I think a lot of people who are practitioners will really want to understand, is that we early on thought about having them auto-publish, and we did that for about 3 hours. When we discovered that, this is different than commenting. Like our Facebook page, we have open commenting. There's lots of stuff on there that doesn't look favorable to us, but we have the philosophy that that's the point of Facebook, to allow that discussion. For this project, it was really clear that we want to highlight we want to highlight real stories. We don't want to highlight random thoughts. We don't want to highlight spam. We don't want to highlight links. So we added a really quick moderation system, and so every week we go in and do a simple approve or delete based on whether it's spam or a story. That's the only form of moderation we have, and profanity. I mean, we're not looking to highlight, profane stories. The other thing it really taught us is that this is really an ongoing opportunity, that we have to be doing this all the time. Again, people, when they think of Facebook, don't think about us, the company. Maybe us in this room do, because all of us are involved in using social media. But the average person is thinking about their friends, their family, their coworkers. That's what Facebook means to them. It's not about us. So we have to keep telling these stories in meaningful ways. So some of the ways we've already begun doing that is looking for the opportunities where we can, again, ask for really powerful stories and then amplify them. One example was Veterans Day in November. What we decided to do on that day was revert the tab version of the Facebook Stories app on our page, our main Facebook page, to only military stories. And then to, let people know that have liked our page that, of course, we thank veterans for all that they've done, but we also want you to hear their stories from them directly, and for you to share any stories you have from how you've used Facebook in the military. And then we directed them to the tab, and we were able to get dozens and dozens of stories within about 2 days. And they included things that you would expect, how people who, how families who have a service member overseas are able to actually know what's going on in their lives, and they're also able to know what's going on in their kids' lives in really easy ways that they never had before. The other big way we integrated this was at the end of the year. Every year, for the last 2 years, we have been doing an end-of-the-year list that we call a Facebook Memology. It focuses on the topics and words that are that have emerged in the past year. It's not what's most popular, it's what's newest and growing the most. Well, we were thinking about it, and we're like, it's great for us to publish this list and tell people what's happening, but the list is always global. It always looks at the biggest emerging trends. Why don't we also let people tell us what was the big trend or big moment in their life? So we used that end of the year list as an opportunity to ask everyone again, what was your most memorable moment on Facebook in 2010? We created a special version of stories just focused on this, where we included our original content from the end of the year list, and then at the bottom included a submission form for people to tell us what was their best moment of the year. And we got amazing stories. We got stuff, average stuff that you would expect that's also amazing. Things like people sharing the fact that they had their first child, or that their wedding was documented on Facebook. But then things that we never would have expected, like this story here, which was about a woman who had fallen and literally couldn't get up, and only thing she could reach was her laptop computer. She was on her laptop computer, logged onto Facebook, looked to see if she saw anyone that she knew, couldn't find her family, but found a high school friend. I think she was looking for her family in Illinois. Her high school friend was in Florida, and told her high school friend through a Facebook message, can you please contact my family, contact someone to get me help, and they were able to send help. Now, we always would advise calling 911 first if you can do that, but that's always the best way. But clearly she couldn't get to the phone, and I would have never expected this as an example of what people are doing on Facebook, but I think it has less to do about Facebook, but more to show about just how connected we all are now and how those can be used for really positive things. Just as a side note on the end of the year project, one of the really big things we did in that campaign, which was a first for us, is we did an entire series for a week on the Facebook page where we took the best moments that people had submitted so far, literally took them verbatim and made them a status update. Again, why the 420 characters was so helpful. With just some minor editing for length, we were able to put them into a status update, highlight them as the best moment of the year, and then again ask people to share theirs. And we really found that by doing that throughout the week, not only did we get many more entries, but we got people to submit things that were really to the point and really, really powerful. And everything from someone sharing like a kidney donation that he found through Facebook to another, a military story, just things that you can't really ever imagine unless you open this up to people, for people to tell you in an easy way. So we got 250 stories in a week doing that end of the year campaign, and we were really thrilled with that. I think that kind of approach is one we're going to try to now take throughout the year. We're going to try to leverage some of our own launches to bring people in to tell these stories, and we're also going to look at moments throughout the year that we think are really meaningful in most people's lives to let them, again, share their story like we did with Veterans Day. Final thing I'll leave you with is just that this might not be relevant to everyone, but creating these stories might not be relevant to every brand, but it's something that anyone could do if you want to. So definitely let me know if you need any advice on how to integrate this kind of application into what you're doing.